halving event when the supply of new Bitcoin just gets chopped in half. It happens on Saturday. Meanwhile, the original digital coin continues to try and navigate the tumult that began with a jaw-dropping 8% drop Saturday night when a swarm of Iranian attack drones and missiles headed straight for Israel. Right now, Bitcoin is down about $4,300. And it stands at the moment at $62,775. Now, since Friday, Bitcoin has fallen 6.33%. Ethereum down 4.7%. Litecoin got hit the hardest, fell about 9.91%. How will Bitcoin, though, let's focus on that for a minute, grapple with the forces it faces, including not just the Iran-Israel situation, but tax season selling? Let's bring in an early crypto investor and longtime Bitcoin bull, Pomp Investments, Anthony Pompliano. We'll get to the tax selling in a bit. I find that fascinating. But we know one thing about Saturday night. Bitcoin offered zero safe haven. It tanked. I was watching it. How are people supposed to infer what Bitcoin can be best for during times of trouble?
Yeah, this is a great story, and I think something worth paying attention to. But the story actually starts with gold. So at the end of last week, gold started to hit an all-time high and was pushing up. And I actually wrote a letter on Friday to investors, and I said, hey, is gold actually signaling that a major geopolitical event could be occurring in the next few days? Mm-hmm. Saturday, we get the attack. And so who was buying gold? Was Iran buying gold? Was China buying gold? Why was gold going up a couple of days before? Is it a country who believed that there was going to be severe financial sanctions against their country, and so they wanted to protect their central bank assets? It's interesting. Then, of course, when the attacks actually occurred, Bitcoin did drop. But I think we can go back to 2020 and see why Bitcoin dropped over the weekend. In 2020, during COVID's kind of initial pandemic outbreak, all asset prices fell and correlations went to 1. So it didn't matter if you were in stocks, bonds, Bitcoin, or anything else. Everything dropped because investors were panicking. They had fear. And so naturally what they want is they want US dollars in that situation. And so thankfully the stock market was closed on Saturday and Bitcoin was really the only market that was trading.
That's right. Because it trades 24/7 for those.
Of course. So what was happening was people were scared, right? So what do? They sell liquid assets and they want to raise dollars in order to be able to have those dollars and figure out what's going to happen. Now, what I do think is important, though, is that if Bitcoin leads on the way down, in that panic moment, it will also lead on the way up in the coming days and weeks after people, I think, kind of get used to, okay, well, what is the current situation? They evaluate it. And they realize that the underlying fundamentals of these financial assets has not changed regardless of what's going on in the geopolitical kind of environment.
Let's talk about the halving event and tax season. What you have noticed is that in the couple of days before April 15th, which is today, folks, I hope you paid your taxes if you owed, that Bitcoin goes down because people are now selling it to raise cash to pay their taxes.
If you have a store of value and you think that it is going to continue to increase your purchasing power over time, you're not going to just put 1% of your assets in. Even though most people say, as a financial advisor, 1 to 3%, that's probably the right allocation for most people. What we notice in the Bitcoin community is people do more whether they should or they shouldn't. And so naturally, if they need cash to pay their taxes, they have to sell Bitcoin or other financial instruments. And so Bitcoin goes down leading into this. And so it actually muddies the water of the analysis over the weekend because you have the geopolitical event, but you also had tax selling as well. So it's not just one culprit. It was a culmination of different things.
Not entirely right. Earlier today, Hong Kong regulators approved Ether and Bitcoin ETFs. I thought China was sort of absolutely not. They banned Bitcoin miners who all had to rush to Kazakhstan and surrounding regions. Are they now giving a very silent nod of the head like, yes, it's okay?
One of the interesting things about monetary policy in the fiat world is that monetary policy is changed according to the world. So if the world is in panic, they will change the monetary policy. If the world has too much liquidity and too much FOMO, they would change the monetary policy. The monetary policy of Bitcoin never changes. So what that does is the world has to conform to Bitcoin. That's what you're seeing happen in China now, is they didn't like it because they thought it was a threat. Now they realize Bitcoin is not going to go away.
Yeah.
And so now they've got to come back around and figure out a way to get that into their hands of their citizens.
Really quick, last time you were on the show, and this was back in February, you said Bitcoin would hit 100,000 by 2025. You still with that?
Yeah, after I said that, people got really upset with me. They said I was sandbagging, that they thought it was going to go much higher, but I'll just stick with 100,000 by 2025.
Okay. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anthony